What's shaking, everybody? My name is Ross Mandel. I'm coming to you guys live today from Delray Beach, Florida, Scott Woolley Studios. And I've just been contemplating, how do I introduce my guest today? And as far as I'm concerned, he checks every single box there is to be a man. He's an absolute stud. You might know, you might be familiar with The Sound of Freedom, the human trafficking expose, the hit movie. I mean, I watched it twice carefully. He's an absolute stud. That's how I describe this man. Help me welcome Mr. Paul Hutchinson.
Thank you, Ross. Super excited to be here with you and your audience today.
I mean, bro, you know how to make money, how to build companies, how to overcome adversity, and then you become a do-gooder. I feel like you're a finger of God on this earth. That's how I feel. I'm so impressed with what I know of your story. And what I like to do is I like to dial the clock back. I'm a little bit of a linear thinker and all that. I'm not one of those great visionaries. And who is Paul Hutchinson? Where were you born? Where were you raised? What was very early life like?
I was born in Provo, Utah. Was raised in a great home. Had 4 younger sisters, and I know years later we actually had my female cousin live with us, and then a girl from Guatemala. Plus my mom. There's like 7 girls and me in the house. My dad was traveling, doing business. I learned how to deal with all of the emotions that come in living in a house with a bunch of girls. But I also learned how, from a young age, to protect the divine feminine innocence and make sure. I was the oldest, so I was the protector in every case, whether it was boyfriends that were out of alignment or whatever else. And so I'm grateful to say that I lived in a calm childhood. However,
by any chance,
to me,
chance, were you raised as a Mormon?
I was raised as a Mormon. Yeah.
And you still a practicing Mormon?
No. I left the church about 15, 20 years ago. I have and part of my story we can go through. I have a closer relationship with my Creator than I've ever had my whole life, in a super beautiful way. And I believe, we're talking about the massive success and the finger of God. I'm just a tool in God's hands every day. And whether it's the child rescue missions or even the massive success with my companies, I attribute all of that to that divine connection. And we'll talk about that in very real terms. You can't just say, okay, oh, God bless that guy and God didn't bless that guy. No, there's very specific things that you can do to be in alignment there.
Now, and the reason I say overcoming adversity is I've listened to some of the interviews that you've done. You speak beautifully, and you're very succinct. And I know that your plan was to become a physician, a surgeon even. Right? Let's talk about that quickly, because I think that experience shaped you.
Life throws curveballs all the time. I think when, and it might just be that God has different plans for us. Sometimes this is my plan, and there's something different. For most of my childhood, I wanted to be a doctor, and not a regular doctor. I wanted to be a surgeon, not a regular surgeon, but in the beginning, a brain surgeon, and then changed it to a heart surgeon. And about 2 months before taking the MCAT, I got in a major car accident, and it severed the tendons in my hand. I was putting myself through school as a concert pianist. I'd been playing for 15 years, and then all of a sudden, boom, when they sewed it all together, these 2 tendons are on the same. I can't move these fingers independently like I can on the other hand. And I used to be able to reach an octave and a half, and I couldn't even hit a whole octave with it. It was 2 years of reconstruction to put everything back together. And, one of my mentors, he said, well, you can be, they told me I wouldn't have the dexterity to be a surgeon if they couldn't put everything together with my hand. And they said, you could be a regular doctor. And I said, well, I don't want to be a regular anything. Yeah, this is
Exactly.
why I want to be a surgeon, not a regular heart surgeon, not a regular heart surgeon. I want to be a pediatric cardiologist, one who operates on children. And so I told him this. I said, you know, if I'm going to be a garbage man, if that's my destiny in life, I'm going to own the dump. That's just how I think.
I'm going to
I'm
be
not
great
just
at
gonna-
whatever I do. That's what I
That's right.
preach, and that's what I teach. Anything you want to do in life, if you choose to do it, strive for greatness.
Well, you
Don't-
know what's interesting about that story? Little side note that I
Please.
think your audience would love. So, in that same car accident, my first wife, Tiffany, she was a model, she was a dancer, she was a little over 100 pounds. She broke her pelvic bone, and she couldn't walk, she couldn't exercise. She started getting pretty heavy. She got pregnant with twins, our two first boys, and then got pregnant again, so our third little boy. And fast forward, she's 29 years old. A couple of years before that, had sold my company for a lot of money, and I was speaking to a group of young entrepreneurs. And I remember telling them, you know, you can do, have anything you want. All you have to do is dream it. And if time and money were no issue, what would you dream? And we were on the way home, and she said to me, she said, Paul, you know, I was listening to you speak to those entrepreneurs. She said, I want to do something great with my life. Now, at this point, my wife is 230 pounds.
Stop it.
More than double the 100 pounds that she was when we got married, right? 230 pounds.
How tall
mother
was
of
she?
three.
Was she like 6'8"?
No, she's 5'8", you
And
know,
she's
5'8",
230.
So, and 230. So she's a big girl.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And she said, I want to do something great with my life. And I said to her, I said, same thing I said to those young entrepreneurs, Tiffany, if time and money were no issue and you knew you couldn't fail, what would you dream? She said, you're going to laugh at me. I said, I will not. She said, since I was a little girl, I wanted to be an NFL cheerleader. I look at my 230-pound wife. I'm like, you go, girl. And so I talked over the next couple of weeks. I realized she was serious. She had danced at a San Francisco 49ers halftime game when she was 14, saw those girls dancing, thought that would be amazing to be a 49ers cheerleader. So I realized she was serious. Who am I to say that a 29-year-old mother of three, 230 pounds living in Utah couldn't be an NFL cheerleader for the 49ers? I mean, I literally, that's my preach. That's why I tell people you can be anything you want. So I know the power of visualization. And so, and seeing yourself there. So I went online, I found a picture of a 49ers cheerleader with hair like Tiffany, but of course her face and body was very different. And I did Adobe Photoshop and I put her face on there and I put at the bottom, Tiffany Hutchinson, San Francisco 49ers Gold Rush cheerleader, framed it, gave it to her for Christmas. She opened it up, started crying, put it on her bedstand. Every night before she went to bed, she stared at that picture. Every morning before she got out of bed, she spent at least 2 or 3 minutes staring at that picture. It motivated her to start exercising. She exercised 2 to 4 hours a day for the next year and lost all the weight from 230 pounds down to just over 100 pounds. And then there was 500 girls trying out for the 49ers cheerleaders that year. There was 3 spots available, and she was the first pick.
Wow.
She was... it cost me like $60,000 in plane tickets just to fly her back for the practices every week. But you know what 32-year-old wouldn't pay $60,000 to have his 19-year-old wife back, right? But it goes to say that literally anything that you put your mind to, anything you can create. It's just a matter of deciding exactly what that is and being willing to put the time in.
It's about making the decision up here and then executing. I get that. That's how I live my life, and that's what I preach. And I think that's a great story. It's almost an unbelievable story. I would have got her a bottle of Ozempic.
Exactly. You can look her up. Just type Tiffany Hutchinson, 49ers cheerleader. You'll see a picture of me, you know, back in my 30s with my young face. And it had Inside Edition did a whole piece on her, called it Tiffany's Triumph. And
I love it. That's so
fun.
crazy. This is a real family of competence, and discipline, and accomplishment. I mean, it's what a great story. I appreciate that. Thank you. So now you get into this car accident. You were a concert pianist or training at that level. You still play the piano?
I I didn't get it because that was right before we got married. 2 years. I mean, I can sit down and rock some stuff, but I
Okay.
haven't really
So
practiced
you
for
can
35
play.
years.
You
Yeah.
can play. And so now you make this decision. This mentor talks to you and he inspires you and says, you know what? Don't feel bad for yourself. Make a decision. Grab your life. And so you go into business. Tell us about that.
Well, there was a few things that I think are important for your audience. There's a few things that he told me. He said, Paul, if you do what I teach you to do, you'll be a millionaire by the time you're 30 and you'll have the time to enjoy it. And I'm like, okay, what do I do? He said, first things first. He said, you've got to learn how to handle rejection. You got to learn how to sell. And I got a job at a cold call and selling children's videos, self-help things on honesty and whatever else. And then he said, Paul, the most valuable piece of real estate you'll ever own is the 6 inches between your ears.
Love that. I love that.
And he said, I don't even want you to know if your car radio works. He said, every time you're driving anywhere, doing anything where you're not in a conversation, you need to be listening to audio programs on business, on success, on finance, on real estate, on relationships, all of those things. And I did. It's so funny. Years later, when I bought, like a few years ago, I bought LeBron James's Range Rover, and it had like $60,000 subwoofers. And my kids said, Dad, what are you going to do? Listen to all your self-help programs on your $60,000 subwoofers? And I said, you know what? That's the reason I can afford stuff like that, right?
Right, exactly.
Is because of the fact that I literally, in fact, one of my kids said, he said, Dad, the only reason you like 80s music is that's the last thing you ever heard. Because
That's
went
great.
full in and just is educating myself everywhere on things that I could do to create value in the world. And so moving forward, I started a company that helped. Our company was I had owned Midwest Center Marketing, worked for Midwest Center for Stress and Anxiety. We had an audio program, workbooks that helped people overcome anxiety, depression, PTSD, addictions, childhood trauma, all of these things that almost every one of us deal with. And built that up to the point where we had 50,000 people a month calling in off of an infomercial. I had a few hundred employees. I sold that company for $20 million at 29 years old.
What year was that, Paul? Do you remember?
Yeah, I was born in 70, so that was 1999. So right before the Y2K. And most of that was restricted stock in a pink sheet company, but I was rich on paper, and that made me feel good about myself.
God! Did you that money ever materialize? Because
enough of it did to start my investment fund.
Right.
Unfortunately,
but then you had the dot-com crash in March of
yeah.
2000, the first end of the world.
And some of the guys there were not in integrity. We had the CFO and the CEO were guys that I found out after a year. I had to stay on as a marketing director. I found out after a year that they were dirty. They were fabricating a bunch of the stuff that they were sending out to the market. And I'm like, you know what? I went into the board of directors. This was literally the day before I went to Africa to climb Kilimanjaro. And I went to the board of directors and I said, listen, I will not make money based on a lie. I'm just not going to do it, period. I said, I'm leaving for 2 weeks to Africa. When I come back, if those guys are still running the company and I have no access to seeing really what's going on, I said, I'm going to go public with the information that I know about how everything, they don't own the proprietary technology they said they own. I said, and my stock's going to go to zero. I'm going to lose $20 million. And I'm okay with that because I will not slowly sell that out based on a lie. I won't do it. And so I came back and they had been replaced by a guy by the name of John Pennington. John was a man of integrity. John and I worked on some things, tried to salvage what we did. The beautiful thing is that John is the co-founder with me of a company called Bridge Loan Capital that morphed into Bridge Investment Group that's now over $48 billion in assets under management. So if I didn't step forward and act with integrity, if I had stayed in that space, I probably could have sold some stock and made a little bit of money before the rest of the world found out that they were dirty. I wouldn't have to take the blame because it was them that was lying, not me. But I would not make money based on a lie. And so in doing so, I believe that one decision, because it's what brought John into my life, together we were able to build something infinitely more successful than that.
And on solid ground, because so
Yes.
I'm just, I'm a stock market guy. I've been doing that my entire life. So in '99, you acquired this paper, right? In a pink sheet company, you called it, which means it's very shaky, at the very least. And but then March of and you were tied up in restricted stock, right? So that's probably 144 stock. So at least a year. So it's already 2,000 by the time your stock is free to trade. And then the market takes one of the biggest shits it's taken ever in March of 2000. I mean, I was there. I actually profited greatly in that during that time. But this is your story. So basically, a lot of that paper is worthless, I guess, by the time.
Yeah.
So you really have no money, well, very little at this point.
Well,
is that fair to say?
I had some because I was doing well in the company that got acquired by that pink sheet company, and so I had enough to survive for a few years, but John and I, we were the company also had some financial problems where they needed. They were buying product out of Asia, and they had some contracts with some big box stores here in the U.S., and they needed what we call purchase order financing.
Correct.
Wherein, the banks will lend based on a receivable
Correct.
once you've delivered
Like
to a
factoring.
Best Buy or whatever, factoring. But very few of them will lend you money to pay the factory in China to manufacture your widget before it gets here. They can't control the potential loss there. Well, John had done $9 million in import-export. He knew how to make sure I didn't lose a container full of iPods on the way over.
And
I knew how to raise money, and I had the connections and whatnot with the right people. So we created a company to do bridge loans in the beginning, just for that company that we were trying to salvage. But over time, we built that up to the point in 2004. We had loans out on almost hard money loans.
So you're a hard money lender at that point. I understand.
Yeah, that's where the name Bridge came from. Our company was called Bridge Loan Capital.
Great name, by the way. Great name.
Yeah, it was great. We're doing bridge loans.
I love it.
But then in 2004, we were really starting to grow, and by 2006, we had loans out on over $100 million worth of property. And I hired a guy named Don Hartman. Don's resume was the most impressive piece of paper I'd ever seen. He had raised billions of dollars to bail out the Asian debt crisis in the 90s in Asia. He was Mormon. He was LDS and wanted to raise his family in Utah, but he was overqualified for everything there. So he jokes and says, "Yeah, Paul found me walking around Salt Lake with an unemployed sign. I'll work for equity." And but I knew we had audited financials. I knew we could go to Morgan Stanley and have them write $100 million check, but I had no idea how to get there. And I, I'm a University of Utah dropout, right? I don't have the credibility. I needed a JD MBA and some guys to talk the talk. And so we brought him on, and in late 2006, he comes into my office and he said, "Paul, we're in trouble." And I said, "We, the fund, the bridge?" He goes, "No, we, the whole country, if not the whole world." He said, "We're looking at a multi-trillion-dollar problem." Now, this is a year and a half before the 2008 crisis. Now, what I didn't realize is Don was arguably one of the top 5 to 10 experts in the world at analyzing banking crises and banking cycles and credit crises. His job at Citigroup before I hired him was the head of the financial institutions research division. He was in charge of researching banking crises all the way back to Nazi Germany to make sure that Citi was in the right asset class at the right time in the right country, et cetera. So when he comes into my office and says, "Paul, we're in trouble. The whole market's going to crash," he said, and everybody who's a lender, he says, "You're a hard money lender and you're doing well." He says, you're going to be upside down with everybody in the market."
Yeah.
He said, "I suggest that we move our strategy." He said, "Banks are going to be in trouble. We're going to have the greatest buying opportunity we're ever going to see in our lifetime." And he said, "Paul," he says, "you're amazing at working with people and raising money. John's amazing at dealing with the SEC." He says, "You guys don't know shit about real estate." He said, "We need to build a real estate team that knows how to work with asset classes that aren't going to crash." And in this case, it was B-class multifamily. And so we found an apartment manager. Ironically, they were called Bridge Property Management. We were Bridge Loan Capital. So we came together and created Bridge Investment Group and became one of the first funds in the country in this crisis to be qualified on a top-level purchasing platform with all the GSEs, Freddie, Fannie, HUD, FDIC, all of these. So when a bank had 30 days to live, we got the phone call. By then, the bank president's willing to negotiate. He realizes in a month he's out of a job and his shareholders have a big fat zero. So we can go in with $30 million cash and buy a $100 million note from these guys just to give them immediate liquidity to stay in business.
Right.
So we were buying these things in 2009 when the rest of the market is losing 20, 30, 50% in the real estate space. We didn't lose any principal, paid out a double-digit return, and the next year paid a 48% IRR return to our investors. So all of a sudden now we've got the attention of the big boys, and we've got $100 million investors coming in. I'm one of the top 10 emerging managers globally. And over the next 15 years that I helped build the company, ended up with a 22.3% net return per year average IRR for our investors. And I built it up to almost $20 billion in assets under management before I retired about 10 years ago.
What'd you do? Did you sell out, or you still carry your interest?
Oh no, I'm still an owner, still a founder. Only thing I did was, I was earning money as a GP, earning money as a founder.
I got it.
I was earning $500,000 as an employee of my own company, and I'm like, I don't need $500,000 a year to have to be babysat it anyway. No, I'm gonna go focus full time on charity work. So I gave up $500,000 a year and then focused everything on charity work.
I love it because so people don't know that was the too big to fail crash, the 08-09, when every bank did fail and every investment bank failed. You were starting to really succeed at that point, which is amazing. I did some business with some Mormons right around 1999. I don't know if you know Sherman Smith. Sherman Smith.
Don't know Sherman.
Bill Vogel.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of Bill.
Bill was a big shot at Montgomery Securities.
Mm-hmm.
We became dear friends, and I actually brought him in to be CEO of a small travel company I bought called TicketPlanet.com.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's a whole other story. But out of San Francisco. But it's very interesting hearing your story because I had some direct involvement with some fellows that were Mormon. One was a Mormon convert, which was really surprising to me, and that's how I got to become familiar with the Mormon Church a little bit and whatnot. And we just did a podcast called The Business of Religion with some guys exposing, what's going on in the world.
I met with those guys.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. I spoke with him about a year ago.
Chris Ayub and Nathan, the filmmaker. They're releasing in about 2 more weeks a huge 7-part docuseries, which will be on every platform, etc. That's going to talk about sort of the corruption in the non-profit secular space, if you know what I'm saying.
So one of the reasons I got out of organized religion and just established a really healthy, loving relationship with my Creator outside of the dogma. So
yeah, I get it. So this is all very interesting because I did some research and I didn't know these things. So I'm psyched. We're getting into some stuff that some detail that people just maybe never heard or are not familiar with, and your ability to communicate is spectacular. So I did see in one of the podcasts that you talked about 2 things: going into business, learning how to sort of eat rejection, which is something that I just do naturally from being rejected a lot, I guess. I'm like a king of rejection. But also how to effectively sell.
Yeah.
You're a communicator. You're a great communicator.
That's really what it's all about. You can, if somebody's going to go into business, those are really the keys. It doesn't matter. You're going to have to learn how to handle rejection. You have to learn how to sell, and because you're either selling to your employees, your idea, or your partners, or your investors, or your customers. Either way, you have to be able to effectively communicate your ideas if you're going to be successful in business. If not, if you can't do that, then maybe you should get into another profession, because that's really where the rubber meets the road. Even if you're not your top sales guy, it's important that you are able to effectively communicate.
I want to one-up you on this now. I'm going to one-up you on this. It's not about business. It's about life.
It is.
It's about being in a relationship. If you're not an effective communicator, I mean, you're going to have problems throughout your whole life. And if you can master communication, you can find life very easy, because, most of the issues that come from life, day to day, stem from an inability, at least on one party, to not communicate. I always like to say to my family, to my team, listen, I can handle anything, good, bad, or ugly. What I can't handle is not knowing. So just tell me, whatever it is. It's an issue. It's a problem. Guess what? We'll get through it some way, somehow. I'm in the solution business in life. And I find that people, they're great communicators, let's say, in business, but they don't speak to their wives, their kids, et cetera. They clam up. And or they're great communicators in family. With friends, and they have strong values, and then they go into the business world and they're afraid to speak their minds, et cetera. So I agree, and I want you to know I think you're an incredible communicator.
My favorite story about my best sale ever is my wife right now. Her name is Ada Vanessa, Hada, Ada Vanessa. We met in Haiti.
Okay.
She was. I tell people meeting a beautiful Colombian actress is kind of cool. But when she's donating her time at an orphanage in Haiti, that's amazing.
Is she there now with you?
No, she's not here. She's on a cruise with my mom for my mom's 75th birthday.
What a woman.
Outside Boston. Yeah, she's amazing. But here's the story. So Henry Cavill is the actor who plays Superman. In Batman. Yeah.
Mission Impossible.
Yeah,
he's the bad guy in Mission Impossible, but he's Superman.
Like chiseled, right? This is like the most chiseled man.
Also,
ever.
He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, I believe.
Yeah, he's a chiseled badass. And Henry Cavill was out of Vanessa's, my wife's work, almost every day for about 3 months. They started to date. Nothing real big in public. They went on like 3 dates, and then she met me. I stole Superman's girlfriend. What?
I love it, bro.
There's my mic drop.
The guy that stole Lois Lane. I love it. That's great. Tell me about yourself physically. You're how tall?
I'm 6 feet tall, 180 pounds.
Okay, you're fit. Seem like you're fit.
I'm doing all right. I look in the mirror once in a while and say, "This is 54." What?
And I saw you in the movie, so we're going to get to all that. But you're not Superman, and you're not. But in real life, you are Superman, bro.
Well, that's what
Superman.
she says.
I want you to know what you're doing. The work that you're doing is what Superman was all about.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's almost like you came from another planet. I mean, growing up Mormon to me, it's like Utah, you guys live in your own world. You know what I'm saying? But I'm like a real Long Island, New York Jew, and very stereotypical. That's who I am. But you guys, you're like Superman to me. I really mean that.
Well, it's funny. On her phone, Henry Cavill, he had his name, his phone number was in there as Henry Cavill, my future husband. I changed it on her phone to Henry Cavill, the fake Superman. Right. So there's
well, I would say Paul Hutchinson, aka Kryptonite.
That's right.
You freaking Kryptonite, bro. And to all these child traffickers, you're Kryptonite. For real. Well, I mean, so I want to get to all this because the fact that I give money to charity, and I've been doing that anonymously, and then also, scholarships in my name at University of Maryland, et cetera. But you have taken another leap forward. That's why I talk about your finger of God on this world, because you go undercover. You literally risk your life, a multimillionaire with a super hot wife. But like Superman, you go out there and you risk your. Now I can't determine whether or not you're just an adventure junkie. You're like an adrenaline junkie. I think that's part of it. But it's as long as it's been for good. I mean, I think that the issue of pedophilia, human trafficking, child trafficking, I think that's
There's nothing worse.
no, I'll tell you a quick story. So I was indicted in 2009, convicted in 2000, and sentenced 12 to prison. I went to federal prison. My first hour in federal prison, I'm a 57-year-old white former Wall Street CEO, banker. I live a 10,000 square foot house, and I had four of them. And I walk into this 66 square foot cell with a three-tier bunk bed, a toilet right in the middle, and a door that's sealed shut most of the time, and two very fit, very big black guys say, put your paperwork on the desk and go take a walk. Now, I've been watching, movies and films and TV. I'm thinking I got to hit one of these guys. That's what it is, right? That's what you do. You go to prison, you hit a big guy. But I'm only there for I'm literally in prison for 20 minutes. I said, maybe you should just wait a minute, So I put my stuff on the table. I go take a walk. I come back in and they say, Ross, welcome. They shake my hand. One guy starts unpacking my stuff and making my bed, because I wouldn't even know how to do these kind of things when I first went to prison. And I said, guys, if you don't mind me asking, what was that all about? Like, what was that? What happened? They said, we had to look at your paperwork. I said, okay. They said, I'm Mike. This is Henry. Henry's been down 14 years. Mike's been down 9 years. Okay. We came from the penitentiary, worked our way down to this low. Okay. And they said 90% of the time when an older white guy comes to federal prison, it's one of two things. He's either a rat or a chomo. And I'm looking at these guys, and I'm starting to calm down. I'm breathing easier. And I said, I know what a rat is, and I'm not a rat. I never met with the government. I never even made a plea bargain. I went to trial. I'm still fighting, appealing, suing the government. But if you don't mind me, what's a chomo? They said, child molester. They said, we don't bunk with rats or chomos. And, these guys were sentenced to federal penitentiary for the convicted of crimes. But even in that world, it's the lowest of the low. If you're a child molester, a rapist, a pedophile, guess what? You're not safe in federal prison. And that's all well and good. And I think that a good part of the civilized world looks down on that behavior, right?
Of course.
But I feel like the problem has just been exacerbated with things like the internet and cell phones and the dark web and all these different things. It allows these people to get together and meet in like little dark places that nobody civilized goes to, really, and communicate and share their like fantasies of this horrible thing. And you are one of the few people on earth that have taken a real public stand against this. And I'll never forget, your movie was so controversial. I mean, Fox TV was the only ones that were talking about it. Even regular CBS, ABC, NBC, they should be ashamed of themselves. Didn't even talk about it. And I know that Hollywood and all kinds of, I hate to say, liberal, leftist ideologies were rejecting it like vehemently.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't even understand. How can you be opposed to this unless you're for it, unless you practice it? I don't want to get into all these things and point fingers and all that, because they cancel people. But I just want to say, that's why you're a stud to me. That's the highest accolade that I could give any man or woman. A beast, a stud. You really, the fact that you make money and you know how to build companies and you're a communicator, that's part of it. Because you need capital to be a serious do-gooder. I hate to say it. Yeah, you could go in a soup kitchen and work, and I applaud that. I've done that. I was broke. I know what it's like to have no money and owe $1 million. And I've been there. So I get that. But if you really want to affect change in the world we live in today, it takes capital, and then a guy like you comes along and risks your capital. I know that people came at you, and I want to hear all these things, but I just wanted to establish a little bit of who you were. So now we
Thank
know
you,
that
Russ.
you were a pianist and a brain surgeon, that God had a different plan for you.
Yeah.
I studied scripture my whole life, but especially when I was away. I had a lot of time. I read the Quran cover to cover, the New Testament, the Old Testament, everything. Kabbalah even. I read the first 8 books of the Zohar in Aramaic and Hebrew and English. And but I will tell you, my favorite line in scripture is, "Man makes plans, and God laughs." It's from the Talmud. And we make plans, and if
God has
whatever
other plans
God's
for
will
us.
is for us, that's going to be what happens. And
Exactly.
so you now are in the world of sort of hard money lending, isolating real great real estate opportunities. You probably have a portfolio. You own plenty of property. You have a super hot Colombian wife who's a do-gooder, and you're kryptonite to Superman. And he really is like Superman, that guy. So tell us. I didn't know you had 4 younger sisters. So I have 2 daughters, which is, they say that having a daughter is twice the stress of having a son. I have 2 beautiful little daughters, and I worry about them every day. And since the day they're born, they say that when you have a son, you have to worry about one penis, and when you have a daughter, you have to worry about every penis. I love that little.
Yeah.
The doctor told me that. The doctor that delivered my first daughter. So at some point, this becomes a purpose. Tell us all about that.
Well, I had been helping to fund a lot of child-related charities. Our company was in the billions. It was doing well. And I received a phone call from an operator who was working in Colombia that said, "Paul, we found a whole bunch of kids, over 50 kids in Cartagena, almost 100 kids in other areas, and he had a plan to rescue them, but he said, I need your help." And ego me was like, "Well, how much do you need?"
Right.
And he said, "I need you. Can you be in Colombia in 2 days?" And he laid out this plan of how this trafficker had a piece of property they wanted to develop into a brothel resort to sell his minors, these victims, to wealthy Americans. And he needed somebody who can effectively negotiate a multi-million-dollar real estate transaction with the cartel, with the traffickers. He said, "I can't teach my Navy SEALs how to have these conversations.
Right.
These guys will see through fake money." And I agree. He says, "Can you be in Colombia in 2 days?" And I agreed to go immediately. And about an hour later, my business partner called me, John, who helped me start the fund. And he said, "Paul, I just heard about what you committed to." He said, Have you thought this through?" He's always been the voice of reason in my life.
I
Right?
understand that.
He says, "Have you thought this through?" He said, "You're set. You could sell out today, buy an island, be happy the rest of your life. Why would you do this?" And I said, "John, would I really be happy if I bought an island, if I bought another plane, if I, would that make me happy?" I said, "Tell me this, John." I said, "If I was doing something else dangerous tomorrow, if I was climbing Everest, you and I would have the same conversation." He said, "Yeah, we probably would." I said, and when I'm 95 years old and I look back on my life and I say I climbed this mountain and I built this multi-billion-dollar company and I helped rescue this many children from slavery, which one of them matters at all?"
At the end of the day, right?
Yeah. He said, "Oh, you're right, Paul." He said, if your background, if your skill set, if you're whatever, if that can put you in a place where you can help even one of these kids," he says, "I can understand why you need to go." And so 2 days later, I'm in Colombia. A lot of it you saw in the movie. We actually took 8 different rescue missions and put them together into one storyline. But in the Cartagena mission, they brought 54 children, just like we showed in the movie. That little girl that we were looking for, she actually was there. We rescued her, but what happened, and this is why we have her as a pivotal person in the movie. The jungle, that was actually in Haiti. There was different operators there. I went in as a doctor, et cetera, there. But the pivotal moment for me, Ross, was when I was sitting there with these traffickers. They had brought all of these children in a house, kind of a separate place under this grass roof area. We were negotiating. Two of the traffickers gets up, they go in and into the house where the kids were, and you could hear some of them crying. And that was really jarring to me. Just sitting there hearing kids inside crying, and we didn't know what was going on. And then he comes back out and he has 4 what he calls zero kilometer
we do
miles.
know what was going on, right? You know, and we don't want to talk about it. But
well, these kids were scared to death of coming out to meet me. That's why they were crying.
But these kids are getting raped, right?
No, they weren't yet.
Sexually abused.
No, they knew that these were 54 kids that were being trafficked, that we had got them to bring all together. I told them, listen, I said, I'm willing to fund your project under one condition. We're going to have a party. I'm going to bring some of my rich friends. Really, my rich friends were all Navy SEALs. Right. And you bring all of your existing inventory, and if we're happy, I'll fund your project, right? So they had brought all these kids together, but we don't want these kids to be abused there. I mean, they've already been abused enough. We want to keep them separate from the action. We put them in the separate place, so we're negotiating with these guys. But halfway through the negotiations, I ordered tequila, which is the sign for them to radio to have the federal agents come in and storm the party. Well, they were supposed to show up in 2 or 3 minutes. They didn't. There was a delay. Right. This delay was like a long delay. And so these guys, thinking the party's ready to start, pull out the cocaine, go in to grab some of the kids. The kids start crying, thinking this is the time that they're going to be defiled. And then he comes out and he has 4 of what he calls the 0 kilometer miles. These were virgins.
Oh, God.
Scared to death. There was an 11-year-old boy that was taken from Haiti. They gave him cocaine because he was so scared. There was this little girl, one that this trafficker had showed me before on a picture on his phone that was 11. I'm sitting down on a chair. This is what changed everything for me, Russ. I'm sitting on this chair, just as tall as you and I are right now. This little girl standing up wasn't much taller than I was as I'm sitting down. So I can see directly into her eyes, and all I could see was fear. She had, her makeup was all smeared because she had been crying. She had she had braids, and she had a kitty cat on her shirt, a little pink kitty cat, right? And I'm sitting there looking into her eyes, and I'm thinking, how in the hell is this okay anywhere in the world? And I made a commitment at that moment to myself, to God, to that child. I made a commitment that I would dedicate my life to eradicating that evil from the face of the earth.
They also say in Scripture, if you save one life, it's as if you saved the entire world. So I salute you. Were you posing as like a client?
Yeah, I was posing as the client.
So they thought you actually wanted these kids.
Yeah.
So you're not just you're not just this real estate developer. You're actually into this whole thing.
Yeah, it's the only way that I could convince them to bring all the kids together for this sting.
And you're having a party, right?
I'm going to have a party with some of my buddies, and you bring all of your existing inventory, and if we like it, we're going to fund your project.
Now, but they wanted your money. But I'm assuming that if you're in that business, you're making plenty of money, right? There's a lot of customers, right?
They're doing really well, but these guys needed about $8 million
real
to
money.
build out this resource,
real money,
right? Yeah. They believe they can
big
make
resort like an Epstein Island, a Lolita Island. They're trying to build.
Exactly.
I watched the movie twice.
Exactly.
I was deeply affected, but I realized after I watched the whole movie, I didn't watch it carefully enough. When the cop figures out that guy he arrests is, holding back information, and he really knew how to contact and get into this thing. I mean, the levels of secrecy. I mean, I didn't even know before that movie that, like, let's just say you have child porn, what they call child porn, images on your computer. That's against the law. Like, I didn't even know that.
Yeah,
like,
people
go to jail just for that kind of thing. And I've seen abuses in the criminal justice system where they plan stuff and they do bad things, and might have wrong intel, and they don't want to admit they had wrong intel, so they rather cause you to be arrested and found guilty. Them, they're just human beings too, and they don't want to have a mark on their record that they did a whole thing and then the guy was really innocent. Terrible things. But I had to rewatch the movie. I was so deeply affected by it, and I'm going to watch it again after this interview because I feel something inside me. I find this. I have 2 daughters, and it's one of the biggest fears. You go to a park or Disney World, or you take the mall. You take your eye off your kid for 1 minute, and that's the end of essentially the end of your life. They snatch your kid, and it happens in Florida a lot. And God bless this Cash Patel with the FBI, Dan Bongino. Now they're this Pam Bondi from this administration. They just found like 80 kids or something, arrested 220 people in Texas and Georgia, Florida. They're finding all these rings now, and they're starting to arrest these people. But the Biden administration just had open borders, and they let all these
kids
human traffickers just have a friggin' open border. What? An open border? What?
Yeah. 130,000 children a year, undocumented, unaccompanied minors,
and they're missing
across the border,
and nobody's
and they're missing. Exactly.
Nothing on the news.
We highlighted this in the movie with the little boy, and where they control him through fear. Every single day for the entire 4 years of the Biden administration, there were children that were taken in Latin America from cities, from healthy families. I didn't say wealthy families. They were healthy families. They got a mom and a dad, but they don't have the resources to follow up. This child is raped. They are drugged. They are controlled through fear. They're told, listen, I know where your mother lives. I know where your sister goes to school. You don't want something bad to happen to them, do you? You're going to do exactly what we say. You're going to go to the border on this train. You're going to be with these people. You're going to have this address and this phone number of your new sponsor, quote unquote, which has not been vetted by the FBI. These kids go into these places and boom, they disappear. The traffickers had this opportunity to bring the supply to the demand, which was sadly Americans, which were the demand. In fact, so many times people, they finish the Sound of Freedom movie and they're like, I want to go do something. I want to go undercover. The worst thing you can do is try to go rescue kids in Mexico. You're going to get arrested. You're probably going to get shot.
Right.
The best thing you can do is go home and hug your children. And parents are like, well, how does that fix things? Well, very few children in the U.S. get taken from a healthy family because there's resources to follow up. But the kids that are taken come from broken homes and runaways and a broken foster care program.
And poor families. Like you said, they don't have the resources.
They don't have the resources and stuff. In fact, and more than even the movie, the book, the Sound of Freedom book in detail gives parents tools that they can use to keep their children safe, things that they can do to identify and be aware, situational awareness. So you're not going to be living in fear. You don't have to be a helicopter mom on your kid. But there are very specific things that we can do every day that take the chances of your child being in that situation down to almost nothing.
Now, there's obviously networks, right? Let's just say in this country, where some guy, or I guess it's mostly men that look to abuse these. It's probably not that many women. There's probably some percentage, but it's probably very insignificant, relatively speaking, that actually have these fantasies of raping or sexually abusing young boys and young girls, right? There's networks of this. And that's what they're starting to uncover. And I don't know, what is the cost? I mean, you probably know some of these things. Like if you want to have sex with a young boy, I'm talking about a kid like 10, or a girl like 10.
I'll tell you, real conversations. We were there. We were negotiating with these traffickers on that mission, and we had to delay. They have these kids there in front of me. I'm like, listen, I'm trying to figure out. We can't have the party start yet. The agents haven't come yet.
You're waiting for the SEALs to come in, right?
Yeah, they hadn't come yet. There was a delay. There was a situation where somebody missed the boat. It was a disaster. But so I'm like, how do we delay this? I said, guys. I said this to the traffickers. I said, you've just proven to me that you could fulfill your end of the bargain. You showed up with all these kids. I said, you bring out the cocaine, these kids, I'm going to have a good time. I'm going to be effed up for the next 2 or 3 days. I said, why don't we do this instead? Bring me a piece of paper, bring me a pen. Let's put together a business plan right now. Now, this was the darkest business plan you can imagine. Sadly, it penciled very, very well. And I'm in this business plan. I said, okay, tell me about the demand. Where is it coming from? And I get information on that. These guys were willing to pay $100,000 a person is what they were charging for the clients
to go
for
to
a
this
membership
island.
fee. Yeah,
$100,000.
$100,000 to have a full membership to this retreat that they could do what they wanted to with
They
kids
just could
everywhere.
pick children, whatever they.
Yeah,
and
it's sick.
It's
sick,
$100,000
sick.
for the year or for life. $100,000 is a lot of money.
Well, when you have unlimited access there, and some guys that's not as much.
It's no
as you would
money,
think.
right? For rich guys, certain rich guys, nothing.
Exactly. So that was their plan.
That
there,
is so crazy.
And see, what was interesting is
did they talk to you about the demand for these kids, or they're assuming because you're one of them?
They talked to me about the demand, and the demand is astronomical. It is off the charts. We sit here and think this is a one-off thing. No, we had a piece of software that went into the dark web, one of our sister foundations, that pretended to be somebody looking for these kind of videos. And this software in 1 month in the United States, this didn't catch all of them. This is just the ones that it was interacting with as a client. In 1 month, identified 800,000 unique individuals in the United States that had downloaded child rape videos.
800,000?
800,000. That was just as this one piece of software was finding. This is just a tip of the iceberg. This is happening everywhere. Here's the sad numbers. Yes, there's 8 to 12 million children in slavery today, which is a huge number. However,
Say that again.
Somewhere between around 10 million children are being sold today.
Minor
slavery,
children.
Yes, these are kids, little kids. There's more. You talk about all of slavery today. There's more today than all 300 years of the transatlantic slave trade put together. However, the real travesty is how pervasive the demand is. And this demand isn't just going and abusing trafficked children. This demand is abusing children in your own neighborhood, in your own homes, in your own families. Literally, 40% of women in the United States admit that they have been a victim of sexual abuse in their lifetime. 1/4 of all women say that it was as a child. 1/4 of all women. If you're in a room with 8 women, there's a chance that 2 of them were abused as children. And most people don't even talk about it. The average age is 52 years old. That's my age, right? I've raised my kids. I've built my career. If you're holding on to that trauma for all of these years, and with men, it's a little bit less. It's 1 in 5. But even them, 1/4 of them, it was under the age of 10 years old in their own homes. And so what's happening, if you walk out in front of your porch at your house, whether you're in an apartment or a high rise or an affluent neighborhood, it doesn't matter. You walk out in front, you look left, you look right at all the doors in your neighborhood. There's a very high chance that one of those houses is a dangerous place for children. So you need to not only make sure that your kids aren't, running away into Colombia and whatever. You need to have a relationship with your kids where they can very comfortably come to you and say, hey, Dad, I don't like it when you tell me to hug Uncle Harry because he touches us weird and tells me that we should have secrets outside of you. Or I don't like this babysitter because she's showing us pornography and said we should trust her more than you. Or I don't like going to this friend's house because her brother is taking pictures of us when we're changing, and now he says he's going to send them around the school unless we do other things. Or even more prevalent today, you need to be the 911 for your kids when they fuck up, right? When they screw up, they need to be calling you.
Correct.
And so
not to be afraid. Not to be afraid.
Not to be afraid. You need it so that your 12-year-old daughter is able to come to you and say, hey, Dad, I really messed up. I was chatting online with this boy who said he was 13, and he sent me some pictures that of his body, and then he got me to send him pictures of mine, and then now he wants more videos, and now he says he's going to send them around the school if I don't do these things and whatever. It's probably not a 13-year-old boy. It's probably a 47-year-old dude on the other side posing as a boy, and it happens all the time. And then these kids are in these precarious situations. Here's a scary thing, guys. The majority of children who are sold for their services, for sex, sleep in their own beds at night and their parents don't know. So many of the operations that we ran, these kids were their babysitter or their aunt or somebody was working with the traffickers, or they had a boyfriend that got them into something, then drugs, and then they were pressured into this situation. It happens all the time. We need to have those healthy conversations, those healthy relationships. If your 13-year-old daughter is suddenly going from super outgoing to a recluse and she's super quiet and not saying anything's wrong, you're
issue.
thinking, oh, yeah, they
There's
think
an issue.
that, oh, yeah, it's probably she's just going through puberty. No, she's at that age, the average age of a child brought into this kind of situation is 12.
Oh my
So
God.
it's super important that
And
we're
I've been
aware of these.
reading, just so you know how crazy this is, that there are some countries right now where it's legal to marry an 8-year-old,
Yeah.
10-year-old.
Well,
I mean, it's what? I mean,
Well,
what?
here's something beautiful we did in the last 10 years. So 10 years ago, if we found an American that was in another country doing these things, we had to prove they could go to jail in Mexico or in Thailand or in Colombia, but if they didn't prosecute them, we had to prove that they made the decision to do that while on U.S. soil in order to prosecute them in the U.S. That law has now been changed. So if you go anywhere in the world, I don't care what the laws are in that country, you go anywhere in the world and you have sex with a minor, you can be prosecuted in the United States for that crime, even if it was legal in that country.
Now, where are the hot spots? You just named a few countries. Like I know Thailand has been a place for years, right? People used to talk about that. What other countries are the spots where these sick people go to have these sort of, experiences?
Well, this is going to surprise you. The United States is the #1 producer and consumer of child pornography in the world. And there's a lot of demand here. And the 130,000 children a year for the last 4.5 years that were brought across the border before we closed the border down, those ones are being exploited. And there are things happening in your very cities right now because of a lot of these situations. But yes, Colombia used to be a really bad place. Colombia was kind of my epicenter of change for me because that was my first undercover mission. That's also what I consider the epicenter of change for the world. That's where we filmed the Sound of Freedom movie.
Right.
And so why not have Colombia be the epicenter of change for transformation? So we have been working down there and we have changed that in a big way. A year ago, you go into Medellin, Colombia, you walk down the streets, you can find prostitutes and underage girls all over the place. Today, you go down there, it's that the government has been working diligently to clean up the problem. Not only that, but the crime problem is Medellin is one of the safest cities and it's safer than most U.S. cities right now. So it's beautiful to see that the movie, there was over 70 million people who saw Sound of Freedom, and hundreds of millions of children are safer today because of it, because countries everywhere are opening up their doors, changing to us. We're helping them change laws and policies, putting together certification programs that are keeping their children safe in their countries. So amazing, amazing advancement globally.
Where are the other countries? I want you to name some. So I want to be aware. Personally, if I know guys saying, "Yeah, I'm going to this place," I'm like, I always say, "Why are you going there?" Now I understand a lot of people I know go to Colombia for vacation because they said that some of the most beautiful women in the world, and I agree with that.
Down there. Absolutely.
Brazil,
Thailand, you go as a single dude to Thailand, there's still a big problem there, right? And so there's a lot going on there. Ukraine used to be a big hot spot, and there was a lot of ultra elites that were going through there. And I think a lot of that is what's going to be uncovered once all the smoke settles there.
Interesting.
Mexico, a lot of beach cities in Mexico have guys that are going down there for this, but we've really cracked down. I did 20 undercover missions in Mexico. Haiti and Dominican Republic, Haiti, I did 12 undercover missions in Haiti.
Wow.
And that's an incredibly dangerous place. And a lot of the kids that were there in Haiti were brought in from other places in the Caribbean. They were coming up from Venezuela. A lot of the immigrants coming in from Venezuela. I did a bunch of missions in Ecuador in which the Venezuelan refugees were coming in through Ecuador, Peru as well. We took down a massive trafficking ring between Peru and Ecuador that most of them them were children that were brought in from Venezuela. And so, anywhere, and Haiti is a big one because that's its proximity to the U.S., but now it's so dangerous that a lot of Americans aren't going there for these things anymore. They'll go into the DR instead, but they've cracked down on it as well. And so anywhere in the world that you have poverty.
Poverty is a big thing because they're
Yeah,
so
it
vulnerable. People are starving. I mean, what do you think?
Well,
You know what I mean?
sadly, we had half of the children that we rescued in Southeast Asia and Thailand were sold by their own families.
Sold by their. I've heard that. Just so you know,
Yeah.
it's a staggering thing to me. But yeah, they sell their children.
We were there just a few months ago, and there was this family who their 10-year-old, they were prostituting. The family was prostituting their 10-year-old because they figured that she was their retirement plan. The mom and
Oh,
dad
my
didn't have
God.
to work as long as she was being prostituted.
I taught a class in prison, and one of the things I was still naive. I was in my first year, but I was an older guy. I'm educated. I'm a communicator and big Wall Street guy, and everybody wanted me. So I'm teaching a class in prison, and we were going around the room, and I asked all the guys to tell us your name and tell us why you're here, and tell us about yourself. Like let's all trying to. This is like a class, trying to everybody gets to know each other. So there's one guy. He's like, my name is I'm from Oklahoma, and I. Convicted of sex trafficking and all these different things. And one of my good friends, who's a pretty rich guy, successful guy, expressed interest in my daughter. So I sold him. He bought her virginity, and then it was good money. And he starts explaining it and he starts explaining how he prostituted his own daughter. And firstly to a lot of his friends, but then it got so crazy. We were just stunned, and he was just talking like as a matter of fact. We were just stunned. And one thing I learned, because for a while I was in a unit. It's called the PC. It's a protective custody unit. There's like 6 protective custody federal prisons out of the 116 that are left now in this country. These people can't be touched. It's very serious ramifications. And I was in a unit living with a bunch of them, like dozens, maybe 2-3 dozen in that unit. And you get a bulletin board in prison. So I have these 2 beautiful young daughters with thumbtacks. I put up these pictures. And then one guy comes over to me and he says, "Listen, Mandel, bro, you got to take all those pictures down, put them inside tape them inside your locker." I said, "Why?" And he says, "Because all these guys," and he's pointing to the cells where they were, they come outside your cell when you're not around, and they just stare at your bulletin board. And some of them come in and talk to you because they want to see these pictures. That's how sick it's. And so I ended up, because I'm a curious guy, I'm there. I don't feel threatened by these people, and they live under serious threat, even in a protective custody situation. And I learned that they believe that we're sick. This is a disease, this is mental illness. They believe that we're just lying. We won't admit that we want young boys, young girls, that they believe that we're lying and everybody's putting on a big show, but they have the courage to act out on what everybody believes. And you can't, and I debated this with some of these guys, and you can't shake them. And it's incurable. They cannot be cured or healed. It's I already know that. I spent a lot of time around these people, and they have a thread, they're all very different. Some of them are doctors, lawyers, professionals. I mean, they're not like bums, and many of them are married with their own children. And they believe that we are lying, and they are liberated, and one day the truth will be revealed, and they'll be seen as the heroes. I mean, it's sick. It's so sick.
Wow.
And it's incurable. And chemical castration is something that I know is practiced in some places. And I tell you, that's the only thing that's going to prevent this.
I told my operators, I said, "Listen, it's not our job to judge. That's God's job. But if we need to arrange that meeting,
I got you. I love that.
You know, just they're wasting my oxygen. You hurt a child like that, you're done. But the real question is how do we help the billions of people who have experienced that trauma themselves in their own homes? How do we help them heal so that it doesn't come out in low self-esteem and anxiety and depression and PTSD and addiction disorders and all of these things that are so pervasive in our world because of people who have unhealed trauma?
So now you funded this movie. You're one of the investors, correct?
Yeah, I'm the primary investor in the movie Sound of Freedom.
If you don't mind me asking, how much did the movie cost to produce?
It cost $14 million to produce Sound of Freedom. It was actually a little bit less than that, but then we had to come up with more to buy out Disney because we had Fox International had put some. They had the international distribution rights while we were filming it, but then Disney bought them out and froze it. We had no ability to distribute it, so we had to raise some additional money to put it together. So, yeah, a little over $14 million.
And you put in. Can I ask you how much? I mean.
I put in the first $1 million, and then I put in some that we converted into. In the beginning, it was just going to be a loan. It was going to be
a bridge
paid
loan.
Back out to me.
A bridge.
Yeah, it was a bridge loan. I don't invest in movies. That's a really stupid investment,
I
right?
get it.
Because it's a good way to lose all your money. And so I said, listen, I'll loan it, and then when the investors when we have the footprint put together, the script and everything else from there, then I want to get out because I don't want to take that risk. Well, after we had the script and everything together, I decided to convert my debt into equity, which I'm super happy I did. We brought in the Carlos Slim family, we brought in the DiGiorgio family, the Walmart family, some people from the Walton family. They were all some other investors that we brought in as part of it. And then it did almost $300 million in box office and digital sales on that film.
So it became a very profitable.
Yeah, and 100% of my profits from the film, 100% of it goes into either Liberating Humanity or the Child Liberation Foundation.
I love it. Can you share with us? So, like you said, Carlos Slim. People don't realize he's one of the richest men in the world. Mexican, was South American telephone business, and you talked about the Walton family. The Walmart founders. How did you approach these? Who approached these people?
So Eduardo Verástegui is the producer of Sound of Freedom. Eduardo plays Pablo Delgado, the billion-dollar fund manager who quits his job to rescue kids. So he's the good-looking Latin boy. In the movie, he plays me. Now, technically, I was involved with a lot of other missions that we kind of brought all in together. But on that very first mission in Colombia, my role was the wealthy buyer. Right. And so Eduardo, because he was a pretty well-known Latin actor. In fact, he ran for president of Mexico just a few years ago, didn't win, but he was the one that had the relationship with some of them. I kind of stayed out of it and let him run with it, and it was great. And the real magic, though, was in Alejandro Monteverde. He was the director and just did a magnificent job.
Amazing. I'm just wondering how you approach an investor with this opportunity, because like we're making a movie. Movie's a terrible investment. First of all,
it's a terrible one. That's why I wasn't doing it. I'm like, you know what? Right. Sorry, I don't pitch people on bad investments. I'm out there talking to the Marriott family and I'm all of these wealthy families about investing in my real estate. I wouldn't go talk to them about a movie. Why would I want to lose their money?
It's right. It's a 1/10 of 1% opportunity to even break even. Forget about making money. To break even, it's 1/10 to 1%.
And the whole purpose of it was to create global awareness.
Right. Well, that I get. To me, it's like if when I was before I had my legal issues, I would have entertained the opportunity, just almost like it's a right, or giving it to charity. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was like,
that's exactly.
I'm never
how
getting this money back, but you know what?
I'm like, here's
doing a good
$1 billion that I can just piss away, but do good with it. I would rather do good with it.
And I was blown away, and I was equally as blown away with the actual movie, but I was blown away by the attempts to silence it, block it, keep it out of the theater. I was shocked.
Yeah.
I mean, institutions.
And you said it earlier. Sadly, it's because this is a problem that they don't want us to talk about.
No, it's pervasive.
Big media. We see it with the P. Diddy situation.
Right.
For years, I loved Will Smith movies. I thought, well, those are awesome until
Yep.
I realized what kind of a man he was.
Yes.
What his wife walked in on him doing, and
Yep.
how many of the P. Diddy parties he was at, and who was at those parties, etc. We have to vote with our money who we support and who we don't. And these guys lost my support when they chose to live lives that were completely out of alignment with what I believe.
Now, you are undercover on 70 different missions. I mean, that's a little wild. You're definitely an adrenaline junkie.
No, after that first mission, I quit
You did.
flying. I was like, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to help with. Yes, I was. There was a certain thrill about having a gun pointed to your head, which I had many, many times.
Did you risk your life? Did you feel like you risked your life a few times?
And every single mission. These guys, they're selling 8-year-olds. If they knew who we were for real, we would be dead in a heartbeat.
They would,
There's no
they would kill
question.
you. Right. They
No
would
question.
Kill you. And it's always on a foreign.
Even-
It's always on foreign soil, right? Most of it.
Even more dangerous was going public. I never wanted to go public. This is why we decided to cast my character as not even Paul Hutchinson, as Pablo Delgado. You're right, the billion-dollar fund manager.
Right.
Because I didn't want to be known at all. I was still doing undercover all the way up until right before the movie was released. And what had happened is the movie was nothing. It wasn't. We couldn't get any distribution at all. And I realized that just going undercover and pulling these kids out of hell was never going to fix the problem. We needed to have some global awareness. We needed to change laws and policies. We needed to help fix people before they ever get to the point where they think it's okay to sell a child. Right? What do we do to elevate global consciousness? What do we do to bring people back to God? What do we do not to pull the kids out of hell, but to pull the hell out of humanity, so that we can fix this problem long term? And my wife, my daughter, they're like, you know what, you really need to go public. And I'm like, that puts us all in danger. They said it's not any more dangerous than a federal judge that's put a lot of guys behind bars. So I did my first podcast a little over 2 years ago, and got shared almost 100,000 times. And I was on somebody's big podcast. And less than 2 months later, Angel Studios picked up the contract on the movie, and boom, it became the #1 independent film in the world. And
Angel Studios. Let's give them a shout out. Angel Studios. The things that they're doing.
Well, and it's not just Angel. I think that the real key was the fact that they had a huge audience of conservative people. They were the ones that brought us the TV series The Chosen, right? So I like to say that Sound of Freedom was brought to the people by the people. This was not a Hollywood production. This was financed by me and some other wealthy families.
These are
right?
really good people, Angel. The
Yeah.
people that did Angel Studios. I mean, I want you to know, full disclosure, I'm building a company called Raw Media. I'm building a media
Good
company.
for you.
We'll be launching within 2 months officially. And it's going to be a big deal. And we look at Angel Studios as almost a liberator. They were a one-off. There are ways to make money. There are ways to capitalize on film, on video, on different things. But you have to take a different approach. Not sort of what you guys did, because what you did was really a mission. I mean, I can't say enough, but I applaud what Angel Studios has been doing within that industry. A unique viewpoint. I'm going to bring something, a little different twist. I've come up with different ways to securitize, and that's never been done. So it's going to be a very interesting thing. But, how do you unsee some of the things you've seen? I mean, do you ever suffer from PTSD and these kind of things?
Well, that's a super important question. So, about 7 years ago, I had been doing undercover for a bit. We were blowing through undercover operators. I had Green Berets with 300 missions in Afghanistan and Middle East, and they already had PTSD. And they one mission undercover with me, and seeing a menu with children on it, they were done. I couldn't. So we were blowing through operators. We couldn't keep them on. And I had 2 guys that were Jimmy and Andy. Jimmy had done 13 missions with me. Andy had done 22 missions with me.
Wow.
And they called me up together and they said, Paul, do you trust us? And I said, yeah, I trust you with my life, literally. we're undercover. I'm in charge of talking. They're in charge of making sure I don't die. They said, well, you need to come to this healing retreat. I'm like, I don't need to heal. I'm Paul effing Hutchinson, right? Now realize this. I had 2 helicopters. I had a plane. I had 10 bathrooms in my house, 8 private suites in my house. I have 3 kitchens, 7 fireplaces, a basketball court in my basement. I was ego. And yes, we were rescuing the kids, but it fed into the negativity of my life.
I get
right?
it.
It was all just
listen.
right?
Trust
Sex
me,
and-
I get it.
So they said, Paul, yeah, you do need to heal. You're on your second marriage, headed for a divorce. Your kids don't talk to you. You need to come to this thing. And they said that this doctor has identified some ways to help people overcome PTSD, addictions, childhood trauma, anxiety, depression in a matter of days. And I called BS on it. I'm like, you know what? That's what my company did years ago. My anxiety, depression company, that's what we help people with. You can't do that in a few days. Well, this doctor was working with the proper use. This is so important, guys. The proper use of psychedelics when it comes to PTSD, trauma therapy, anxiety, depression, etc. And I went to this thing, and I'm telling you, Ross, this was the most transformational experience of my life, bar none. Way more transformational than first seeing child trafficking, etc. I went into this and people are thinking, oh, wait a minute. Psilocybin, that's on mushrooms, that's dangerous. It's a Schedule 1 drug. It's more dangerous than cocaine. Here's the thing. Do your research, guys. The psilocybin is safer than table sugar. There's never been a case of addiction. There's never been a case of overdose. And when used properly, with a trained facilitator who understands how to work with the medicine, you can create. We literally had our operators with major PTSD who had been on anxiety, depression medication for years, etc., within days were able to break free of those things. People with addictions, we have an 85% success rate in helping people overcome pornography addictions, alcohol, even cocaine and heroin addictions by the proper use of psychedelics. And so I went into this and it was so transformative to me that I became a master facilitator. My daughter became a shaman over the last 8 years.
Wow.
And we have now hosted and facilitated today 76 guided meditation, plant medicine, healing experiences because of the fact that I saw so much change, not only in my operators and getting rid of all of that shit that we were dealing with, but we started bringing in women who had dealt with childhood rape and horrible things that 10 and 20 years worth of therapy weren't doing any major impact. Yet we could bring him in for 4 or 5 days in a transformational experience. And so that's something I'm super passionate about. And I think it's important for people to do their research because these laws are changing. Trump, and even I've been friends with RFK for almost 10 years, and he is committed not only to come in and take down all of the corruption in big pharma and big food, but he is committed to decriminalize the use of psychedelics. But you cannot go to a rave party and go get high with your friends. This is actually incredibly dangerous because what happens is this: your mind when we're young, with 0 to 9 years old, is in a state of neuroplasticity. We're very impressionable. We can learn 3 or 4 languages at the same time that we're learning how to walk and talk and everything else. Well, after 9 years old, now it takes 21 days to get into your subconscious mind. Before that, it's very fluid. And if something happens, you're hurt by your uncle, you're yelled at by your dad, those things carry forward in your life in the form of so many addictions and et cetera, et cetera. Well, the psilocybin creates a temporary state of neuroplasticity within your subconscious mind.
Wow, I get it. I understand.
Allowing a trained facilitator to go in and surgically remove those traumas that have been dictating your life. 95% of our life is run by that subconscious mind. And if we're holding on to unhealed trauma, it's showing up in so many areas of our life. And so people can go to liberatinghumanity.com and get information not only on the Sound of Freedom book, but on the healing retreats themselves.
Say that again, liberatinghumanity.com.
Yeah, Liberating. You can go, all my social media is all Liberating Humanity, or go to the website, liberatinghumanity.com. You can pre-order the Sound of Freedom book. It's coming out July 29th on Amazon, etc.
So exciting. I want to get to that. I want to end with that.
If I was with you right now, I didn't know we were both in Florida, I would have given you a signed copy. We could
bro, we're going to exchange information, okay, after the
Absolutely.
after the podcast. I want to get your podcast, your direct information, because I have a lot of things I would love to share with you, and
look forward to it.
I could use a little healing myself.
I
have PTSD from my experience, my legal experience, fighting the federal government.
Sure you do.
I mean, they were a tough enemy, boy. I just have a series of questions that we just have to ask you, because we've touched on a lot of it. But, why do you think the media has been silent regarding child trafficking? Is there a bigger agenda at play? I think we all know that, right? We don't even think it. We know it.
It's the degradation of the nuclear family. It's been in their playbook for a long time. And sadly, there are more people in those positions that are involved with this stuff, and they do not want us to have these conversations. This is why, even on YouTube and stuff, we have to edit half the words that we talked about on these things, because they don't want these conversations to be
they cancel
out there,
you.
They're going to get
the algorithm all of a sudden turns off when they see these subjects. It's really nuts, because I've experienced that personally already. Yeah. And, I'm a fledgling podcaster. I mean, it's the craziest thing, but
that's why I've stayed away from some of those keywords, so that we can.
There were people that said to me, "You sure you want to have Paul Hutchinson on?" I swear to you.
I know.
You're controversial, believe it or not. And it's stunning to me.
Yeah.
What is controversial about a guy that's exposing human trafficking?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know then the answer, right?
I do.
Now, we know that it's true that some of the elites and celebrities that are idolized are involved in these trafficking rings in some way, shape, or form, even if they're just, customers, right? Are there any names you can name?
Here's the thing. I'll just say it this way.
Yeah.
The corruption goes almost to the top and beyond the top. Even the Jeffrey Epstein thing. If you were an agency with possibly 3 letters or more, if you were an agency and that you wanted to control the votes of a senator, of a congressman, of a federal judge, you want to control their votes forever.
Extortion.
You get them on film with a 12-year-old, you control their votes forever.
You never name the names. You would just use that as leverage.
Yep.
And that's happening right now in the Senate and in
every
Congress.
day. Every day.
And I believe it happened in the White House, but that's just a personal belief.
Yep,
I
and
just
it's
want you to
happening,
know.
and it's happening on a global scale. You wonder why a little teeny country in the Middle East has so much control everywhere. Well, I believe that the Mossad has as much blackmail on people as the CIA.
I believe that they do. I have a family that my brother is one of the biggest journalists in the history of the country of Israel, even to this day. He's on because of what's happening. He had a TV show, Prime Time. He made Aliyah in 1984. I bought him a house there. We own property, etc. And I can tell you that they're the smartest, sharpest, most technologically advanced group of people in the world. Mm-hmm. So therefore, they have access to everything. And right now, they're hunting down Iranians that were involved in October 7th or this. Hunting them down in Iran, while the Ayatollah is the supreme leader. Understand how advanced these guys are. It's crazy, right? But you named a name. You talked about Will Smith, but I think it's been revealed now that him and some others were involved in it, maybe not in trafficking, but in some way, shape, or form.
Some these freak off parties that Diddy ran for
rape,
years.
Underage. These women are being trafficked. They don't have to be minors. I get it.
Yeah.
And so, you've literally risked your life to save children. You've risked your life, whether you know it or not. You've said it, but maybe even, oftentimes we don't really measure risk properly. But once someone gets killed in the act of, all of a sudden, the
it becomes real.
Ultimate
I had
risk
an
factor
operator.
Becomes very. Have you ever seen anybody get shot or killed?
I had four traffickers were killed while we were undercover. And one of my operators, Jim, I talk about that in the Sound of Freedom book. I was at his funeral in Haiti when I met my wife now, Ana Vanessa. It was my last trip to Haiti. I'd done 12 missions there and lost Jim. But we took down the largest child trafficking ring in the Caribbean, including 4 federal judges as part of that.
What a shock. I get it.
But yeah, it's incredibly dangerous.
Wow, it's crazy. Have you ever been betrayed by a government or a law enforcement agency when you were trying to expose?
We were. I was arrested by dirty local cops multiple times in other countries.
I'm sure
because they were working with the traffickers.
They get paid off. That's how it works, right? They get paid.
Yep.
It's imagine you're a small town cop in Colombia or some country, Ecuador,
Mexico.
You're
Ecuador,
making no money. Someone's offering you $1,000 a week, which is 3-4 times what you're making.
Yep,
You're gonna take that money to look the other way. I hate to say it. It's crazy. If you had one unfiltered message to every parent in America, I think you said this before, what would you say? The raw truth. Love your children. Communicate with your children, right?
Well, the raw truth is this. The only way that we're going to fix this problem is to elevate global consciousness. All of us have to look in the mirror. Everyone individually has to take responsibility for their own actions. Now, hopefully nobody watching this is ever going to hurt a child. However, we all have to take responsibility for the ripple effect of our actions. I call it tension transfer. You go to work, you yell at your employee, that employee goes home, yells at his wife, she yells at the son kicks the dog. Literally, that kicking of that dog came from you being out of integrity. Now, let's pretend like you go to work and this guy, what you didn't know is that he was abused as a child. He's addicted to pornography. He's strung out on drugs. He's maybe gone into child pornography. His wife left him already. And now you yelling at him. He goes home and this is the weekend that he has his 12-year-old daughter and her cousin. And now that tension transfer literally affects a child. We all need to look in the mirror. We all need to. I love the end with this story. This man that's sitting on a couch and he's reading his newspaper, and this little boy comes in. And he says, "Daddy, can we play baseball?" And he's like, "No, I'm busy. He's reading the newspaper, right? Little boy comes back a little while later. "Daddy, let's play baseball." And the dad's kind of frustrated. He turns the page and there's a picture of the world. There's a map of the world there, and he tears it out and he tears it up in a little piece of paper and he throws it on the floor. He says, "Son, you need to learn your geography. You tape together every single country exactly where they're supposed to be, and then I'll go out and play baseball with you." Well, like 5 minutes later, a little boy comes back and it's taped together perfectly. And the dad's like, "What did you do? How'd you figure out that?" Little boy he turns it over. He says, "Well, there's a picture of a man on the other side. I just put the man together and the whole world came together."
Wow.
That's the answer right there, is every one of us needs to put the man together first. We do that. We don't have to try to figure out how to save the world. We have to save that guy in the mirror, that girl in the mirror. We do that. We can show up with pure integrity, and the ripple effect of our actions will indeed save millions of children.
I love that. Thank you so much. Now, the movie has been out, 2 years now?
2 years,
And it's a hit, and I'm going to watch it again later today. And I urge everybody, Sound of Freedom, where can we find the movie? What streaming?
Go on Amazon. Amazon Prime has it. It's all over the internet.
Prime, Netflix, or no?
I don't know if Netflix picked it up. We're kind of mad at them. They turned us down back in the beginning when we were just trying to get them to buy us out.
I get it.
They do the TV series Cuties, but they turn us down. Are you kidding me?
I get it.
So
now, so we could find it on Prime Video somewhere.
Yeah.
We search it up. Now, you've just wrote a book, and you're doing a little bit of a book tour about. It's called The Sound of Freedom. It's
Sound of Freedom.
Never before scenes. I mean, talk to us about it.
True stories that inspired the film, and this is more than just the rescue mission in Colombia and Doctors in the Jungle, etc. This goes into detail as to what we needed to do to train as operators to keep ourselves safe. And parents can use this situational awareness and knowing how to identify signs, etc. These are all things that parents can use to keep their kids safe. And then going into the rescue missions. But the last 4 or 5 chapters is all about liberating humanity. What do we need to do to change this for future generations? How do we come back to creating a healthy nuclear family? What are some key things that we can do to help change that man in the mirror so that we never have to have this conversation 5, 10, 15 years in the future because of the negative ripple effect of our actions?
I feel that this is a cancer, but
Yeah.
I think it's so pervasive. All we can do is what we can do. I think that this is going to plague us for a long, long time, forever. As long, if you're human. But the fact that you're fighting back, I love that, and I'm so impressed. So, what is this book called?
It's called The Sound of Freedom. The Sound of Freedom.
How'd you
Coming
come
out
up with
in-
that? I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be in the bookstores in Amazon on July 29th.
Okay.
And or you can pre-order it on the Liberating Humanity website. Or if you can't remember Liberating Humanity, you can just go to soundoffreedombook.com and it'll pop you right in.
Soundoffreedombook.com, and you'll be able to order it off Amazon. I can pre-order it and all that.
Yep, you can pre-order it right there.
Okay. And what about an audiobook? Yeah, we'll have an audiobook.
We're working on that right now. Yep, we're almost done with that one.
That's terrific. And
So we had Joe Rogan actually asked for the audiobook just yesterday. So he's trying to decide if he wants me on his show, and so we sent him a copy of the audiobook. So
he better put you on his show.
that would be beautiful.
You can always
Yeah,
tell
I'd be
Joe
super
that you
grateful.
got Ross Mandel.
That's right.
So guess what? Joe Rogan is, number 2.
That's right.
But tell us, is there anything before we sign off? Tell us exactly how to find you, how to find this healing. I forgot already. I need to get that information.
Yeah, so
and any final messages you want to share with us?
absolutely. You can find me anywhere online on Liberating Humanity, on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok. All of those are Liberating Humanity. On LinkedIn, I think it's still just Paul Hutchinson, and on X as well. But then you could go to liberatinghumanity.com and get information on the book. You can get information on the retreats themselves and other things you can do to keep your kids safe. Or if you want to help with the foundation, you can go to childliberation.org or right on Liberating Humanity. There's a
Liberating
link to
Humanity.
child liberation right there.
Those are your big tag words, so to speak. I love it.
Yeah.
Paul,
Thank
I
you.
just want to say it was a real privilege to have you here today. I feel like we really had a chance to get to know you, to understand the man that you are, and a little bit of how you became this guy. The guy you'll always be to me, the guy that stole Lois Lane from Superman. I mean,
That's right.
that's huge.
That's beautiful. Well,
Thank
I'm
you.
super grateful. Thank
you
you, Ross,
so
for
much.
having me on
What a
your show.
privilege to get to know you.
Thank you.